This is The Drive with Dale Lolley and Matt Williamson on your 24/7 home of the black and gold. SNR, Steelers Nation Radio.
And welcome to The Drive. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, the fall weather is definitely upon us here now. Pittsburgh is, well, it's chilly out. It's windy. It's
It feels like winter.
Wet,
Yeah,
all
it's
that
Thanksgiving week. Happy Thanksgiving week to all.
Happy Thanksgiving week. And before we get started here, I just want to let everybody know that tomorrow, if they're expecting the video portion of our show to be on YouTube, that won't happen because the Mike Tomlin press conference is taking place at 2:30 tomorrow, which means I will be down at the South Side. We'll still do a show. It will just
probably be from 3 different locations, it sounds like, so it could be a little clunky.
Be a little different than usual, but
there still might be a YouTube.
We're still trying to see if we'll have the show on YouTube.
But you will not see our smiling faces.
Yeah. Anyways.
So you're welcome for that.
Smiling face, yes.
That's our gift to you
Welcome
on Thanksgiving week. Right.
Some interesting...
And, of course, we're not doing a show Thanksgiving. It's another weird week, 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah. Interesting results yesterday, and I tweeted out after the 1 o'clock games, Matt. Division games are just different. And you see different results from these kind of games.
Every year, all the time, and we always seem to overlook it. You know, like just analysts across the board.
Like Washington's an 11-point or 10-point favorite over the Cowboys, whatever it finally went off at. They end up losing that game 34-26. A game that was 10-9 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah, was there 41 points in the fourth quarter, I think it was?
That would be correct, yeah. Insanity ensued.
I mean, like, there's a lot to take away from that game. Like, Parsons is like what? I mean, like, they have a defense when he's out there. It's not just garbage, you know. So, and I thought Rush played a little bit better. I also think that Washington, and we talked about this leading up to Steelers Commanders, they won one game with a Hail Mary. They beat the Giants that didn't have a kicker pre-Steeler game. That they're still out kicking their coverage, but they're not this year's Texans with the second overall player. They're a good to average type team. They're not a contender, and they're coming back to earth a little bit. But the last quarter or last 5 minutes of that game was a non-serious endeavor. I mean, that was not NFL football.
I was trying to explain it all to my wife. I'm down in my basement watching the games on TV down there. My wife's upstairs, and she kept hearing me yelling and stuff. Like, what the hell? She's like, what were you yelling about? And I'm like, all right. So I tried to explain to her everything that occurred in the final 5 minutes of that ball game. And I was still forgetting stuff that I'm like, and then this happened, and then I couldn't believe this, and they didn't, then they left Terry McLaurin
just runs 90 yards or whatever untouched. Like, what's going on here? And then you miss the extra point.
Miss the extra point,
and then of course you hit the onside, and that goes for a touchdown too. And like, this is non-serious football. But you're right. I mean, that's a great way to open the show. You maybe gave this show a little bit of thought. Like the division games are weird. Like Tennessee, Houston.
Titans go into Houston and beat the Texans.
Yeah.
The Texans were over a touchdown favorite.
And they had 8 sacks and a defensive score and lost to Tennessee.
Yes.
I mean, it's a perfect example of styles making fights. I mean, Levis was all over the place, some good, some bad. But a big key to me with that one was Houston's interior O-line, and O-line as a whole is a massive problem. Like they threw okay, but Mixon did nothing. Sweat and Simmons were dominant interior players in that game, and just weird stuff happens in division.
Yeah.
Too much familiarity.
The Cardinals, who had been red hot, they go to Seattle. They're favored in Seattle by it was only a point.
Right.
They weren't competitive in a 16-6 loss.
No, and I don't know who the best team is in that division, but Seattle's defense is back to why you hired this coach. It's healthy on the front. The Leonard Williams of the world and Maffe's and those guys are playing really well. And a lot of people kind of like rolled their eyes when they made that Jones trade at the linebacker spot. But he kind of like pulled the whole room together. I mean, he's a veteran.
He's the carpet.
The
rug pulls the whole room together.
Exactly. And the defense now is back to being really good. Smith and Jigba's blowing up. What's that?
We just didn't pee on him. That's all.
And Arizona's up and down.
Woo, peed on the carpet.
So again, division stuff's crazy.
And
I mean,
Vikings Bears.
I would say the Bears game too.
The Vikings are up
Should not have gone to probably overtime
24 to 10.
Yeah.
They're in control of the game. They get outscored 17-3 in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. Caleb Williams was quite good in this game. And frankly, if I'm Chicago, I don't mind losing so much because I helped my draft stuff and all that. But I was really competitive against a good team. They totally eliminated Justin Jefferson, which was their game plan. But Minnesota showed, okay, well, we can win left-handed. We can hand it to Aaron Jones, and we can throw it to Hawkinson and Addison. But in the big picture, Caleb Williams is getting better, and they've had 2 games without their former offensive coordinator, and the quarterback looks like a different guy. So good. That's what we want, you know?
Yeah.
But,
so just some different results in these divisional games that
obviously leads us to Steelers Cleveland and Steelers Bengals, and
right.
I mean, there's a lot of
Steelers Ravens.
Yeah,
You know, everybody expects the Ravens every time to come in and they're going to blow the doors off the Steelers, and it doesn't happen.
No, and the Thursday night game in the division on the road is a chore. Yeah, it is, and obviously, majority of the Steelers' schedule is division games, and as is the past 2. I mean, a weird scheduling quirk, obviously.
It really is. What do you take?
Bears are rated like that too.
Yeah, the Bears have the same situation. Yeah. What do you make out of Chiefs Panthers?
Best game ever by Bryce Young, and I think that sitting a young quarterback down might be something we see more of. I know Richardson's stats aren't great, but he looks a lot better since getting sat down than before. Young looks
it says something about Levis.
Levis is another one. He got hurt, but I mean, maybe he could have played through. I think
he could have played. I think he could have played a couple games earlier.
Right.
You know,
but I thought Young was the best game he's ever played. I think their offense is really promising. I hope the owner realizes Canales might be the answer at head coach.
I don't care about the Carolina aspect of it.
I know.
I'm talking about the Chiefs part of it because everybody's treating the Chiefs like they're this unbeatable juggernaut. And they are not.
They do not. They do not look like a three-peat.
I get you talking about the Panthers. I like what the Panthers are doing.
I always like to give the opponent credit.
I get
too.
it.
I knew we were looking at this through,
but the
red and gold eyes.
The Chiefs got some issues.
They got some issues, and they look a little fatigued too. Like they've played a lot of football in the last couple of years, playoff games, etc.
They're not young anymore either.
They're not young anymore.
Kelsey's old. Jones is old.
Exactly. I mean, I think their pass rush, like they went out and got Uche. And we didn't think much of it, and it's not a huge move, but they need another pass rusher. It's Chris Jones getting doubling and tripled all the time, and the Karloftises of the world are tough guys and role players, but they're not finishers, put teams away, pass rushers.
Chris Jones had no stats in that game.
Did he? I'd say he was pretty invisible.
And they ran the football.
They did. And I think their secondary is missing a Snead. I mean, for sure. They've had an injury or 2, and they're just not real dynamic. The offense is tackle needy. We've said that since before the season started. I don't see any explosiveness from Kareem Hunt, and Pacheco will bring that, but he's not Saquon.
We don't know if he will or not.
Yeah, right.
I mean, you're coming off of a major leg issue.
Right.
That I don't know. Would he look like J.K. Dobbins did when J.K. Dobbins first came back? Right. He made some plays here and there, but
there's definitely something to finding a way to win. I mean,
absolutely,
they're great at it. And I didn't realize this, but it's at least as impressive as Tomlin's streak. Andy Reid's won 10 games or more in 10 straight years. That's wow. I mean, some of that's pre-Mahomes too.
Yeah.
I mean, that is an unbelievable streak and one of the greatest coaching things I've ever heard, to be honest with you. And that's not a fluke, obviously. But they do not look like when we'll talk power ranks tomorrow, but I think the Eagles and Lions are clearly above the Chiefs.
I think the AFC is very flawed.
Think the Bills are above the Chiefs.
Yeah. I think the Bills were the team that kind of benefited from they were out of sight, out of mind this week.
Right.
And you're watching everything else that's happening here, and their division stinks.
No, their division stinks. Like Miami actually is a team that's benefiting from putting a little bit of a wing streak together. Can they get back in this thing? Maybe. But I just had a good conversation with Tim Benz, and he's filling in for Mark Madden, and I thought he said it really well. He's like, tonight's game aside, maybe that changes things a little. I don't view the Steelers' place or amongst the AFC any differently than I did a week ago.
Thursday changed nothing for me.
Right. The Bills were off. The Bengals were off. Kansas City does what they always do and win a close game.
Squeaks by a bad football team.
Right. And Denver won, but I don't think is any more of a contender.
Let's put it this way. If the Steelers went to Carolina right now and won by 3 on a last-second field goal,
yeah, right.
Steeler Nation would be going bonkers.
Bonkers.
As what were they, 11-point favorites, 10.5, 11-point favorites? And you squeak by that team, and you could have lost that game?
Mm-hmm.
I mean...
No, there's a lot to worry about there, and I think age has a lot to do with it.
Yeah.
Like adding Hopkins is great, but him and Kelsey have played a lot of football in their career. And November
when Juju's the young guy,
yeah, and they don't have any explosiveness on offense. It
None.
really is a struggle. And I'm not worried the slightest bit about Mahomes, but he's not the best player in the league right now.
Carolina had 12 sacks on the season going into that game, and I believe when I looked at it, he had been sacked like 5 or 6 times in that game.
Yeah, I knew it was a bunch. And there's not many defensive linemen.
It was 5.
I can't even name that many Panthers D linemen.
He got sacked 5 times by a team that had 12 sacks going into the game.
Yeah, they're last.
Clowney had a sack and a half. He's the name. But Josie Jewell had a sack. J.C. Horn had a sack.
Yeah.
Deshaun Williams had a sack. I mean, they were just getting home. Kansas City's offensive tackles are an issue.
They really are. But it's certainly a first-world problem to have one loss.
Oh, I get it. And they're still finding ways to win.
Yeah.
But to me,
Reed.
When people talk about that Christmas Day game here in another month, you can't beat the Chiefs. I don't know if that's the case.
Without question, the game on the schedule, I think the Steelers have the worst chance of winning is in Philly.
Yes.
I mean, they're great
they never
right
win
now,
in Philly
and they
as
never
it
win
is.
there anyway. Right. So, yeah, Tim actually asked me, he set the over-under at Steelers remaining wins at 3.5. And I went 3, but it's a good line. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the right line. 3 or 4 is.
So he has changed his tune on that because on the pregame show the other day, he's talking about 12 or 13 wins. This team can win 12 or 13 games.
Yeah, he asked me if
I'm like, it's probably more like 11 or 12.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough
You're going to lose
stretch.
games in the NFL. That's what happens.
Question. And
it's kind of the point of this whole discussion. When you play divisional games,
and there's a lot of them ahead.
Funny stuff happens.
Yep, 100%.
So,
the landscape is interesting, but I don't know how much the AFC landscape changed. And
not a great deal.
I would power rank the Bills number 1 in the conference, but not like far and away either.
No, they got their issues.
I think they're probably behind the Eagles and Lions.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah. And tonight might change my opinion on the AFC a little.
I mean, Houston going out there and laying an egg at home against the Titans.
They have issues.
Like, I had them in that group of contenders in the AFC. I don't think they are.
Me neither.
I think there's 4.
Like, I'd love to play them.
Yeah.
In the postseason. Of the division winners, by far, that's the first one.
Right.
And the Ravens, I'd rather play the Texans than the Ravens.
Yeah.
I might rather play the Texans than the Chargers. See what they look like tonight.
Yeah.
Houston's the better team, but Herbert's scary.
Stroud's not so scary right now.
Not right now. I think he's lost a lot of confidence and isn't elevating those around him.
Yeah. I just think, it's that glass ceiling thing.
Mm-hmm.
How about this, man? I was just looking at this before the show started. We just said the hierarchy of the AFC.
Yeah.
Talked about that. The Steelers are 3-point underdogs in Cincinnati on Sunday.
Oh, are they? I haven't seen any.
3-point underdogs.
Wow.
You want to talk about disrespect?
Yeah. And again, it's day 1 of my Cincy prep. They do good things, they do bad things. I mean, like, you talk about the Panthers being a terrible pass rush team. Well, this team's got a really, really good pass rusher at Hendrickson, and they're a terrible pass rush team. I mean, they're only better than, like, 2 teams in terms of sacks per game.
Their wins have come against Carolina, the Giants, the Browns with Deshaun Watson, and the Raiders.
Yeah.
That's who they've beaten.
That's who they've beaten. The other flip side of the coin is, though, they're 1-6 in one-score games, and their average margin of defeat is very low too. So they've lost a lot of close ones.
Yeah, they find ways to just lose
to the decent or above average teams.
Yeah,
yep, very much so.
I don't know what to expect of them. I don't know what to think of them.
I don't either.
People talk about the Steelers' red zone problems, and we'll talk more about this later in the show. Cincinnati's allowing a 70.6 touchdown percentage in the red zone.
I think it's even worse
They're
lately.
31st in the league in red zone defense.
It's horrendous. And they have a lot of defensive problems. And Burrow and Chase are unbelievable.
They're playing out of their minds, but it doesn't matter because – and here's the thing.
Right.
The one linebacker comes out last week on social media, Jermaine Pratt, guarantees a win over the Steelers. Yeah. Dude, you're a defensive player on one of the worst defenses in the league. You shouldn't be guaranteeing anything, but you're going to show up on Sunday.
If it was T. Higgins or Chase or Burrow saying, I'm like, you guys can talk. You guys are playing really, really well.
Your defense stinks. Shut up. Don't say anything. Why would you want to egg anybody on? And, oh, by the way, you're a middling player.
Yeah. You're part of the problem.
You're part of the problem.
As are most of the defensive players. So I had to look at this red zone stuff. Only Dallas is worse in the red zone than the Bengals. The Bengals allow a 70.5 conversion rate. But over their last 3 weeks, they're allowing 85.7%.
Wow.
I mean, horrendous.
That's against – this is over the last 3 weeks. That's against the Raiders, the Ravens, and the Chargers.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I didn't look at the opponents, but yeah.
Raiders and Chargers aren't exactly explosive offenses.
Raiders terrible, yeah. I mean, think of the quarterback. At least there's two good quarterbacks in this group, right?
At least with the Ravens, okay, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But the other two?
Right. Yeah. I know we're going to talk red zone in a bit, but I just kind of dug into it a little bit. The teams that are really converting well in the red zone are the guys with the great quarterbacks right now. You know? And
they gave up 26 to the Chiefs, 38 to the Commanders, 24 to the Panthers, 41 to the Ravens, 7 to the Giants. They win that game. 14 to the Deshaun Watson-led Browns. 37 to the Eagles. 24 to the Raiders. 35 to the Ravens. And 34 to the Chargers. And you've got a defensive player out there talking smack.
Yeah, that makes no sense.
Shut up, dude.
Yeah, right. I'm sure even Burrow's like, come on, man. I'll do the talking.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of doing the talking, we're going to take a break. And we'll talk to Rob King. He likes to do the talking. So we'll do that after this. He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley, and this is The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, and we're joined on the Justin Miller hotline by Steelers play-by-play announcer Rob King. How you doing, Kinger? How'd you enjoy your weekend?
What's happening, guys?
What's shaking?
Yeah, it was good. Did a little high school football, so that was fun with Wolf.
You brought my Fort Cherry Rangers home for a championship, second straight championship.
Fort Cherry Rangers. That was a heck of a game.
You got to keep the pipes in practice, huh?
Yeah. I didn't want any downtime. No, it was a blast. It's been so long since I've done that, and Wolf and I did it for it must have been 10 years. That was when I first started working with Wolf. An absolute blast to do. The coaches were great. Clareton, Wayne Wade. I mean, you think about Clareton football, it's hard not to think about Wayne Wade. I mean, they've won 14 titles. He's been part of 11 of them. 1 as a coach, 6 as a defensive coordinator, 4 as a head coach, or 1 as a player, I beg your pardon. They hadn't won in a while when he was a quarterback during his playing days. 6 as a defensive coordinator, 4 as the head coach, and then Fort Cherry, also coached by an alumni, Tanner Gary, and back-to-back titles for them. His grandfather was the first coach in school history, coach for 44 years. Then his dad coached. I mean,
his grandfather was Marty Schottenheimer's coach.
Yeah, Marty Schottenheimer
and Marvin Lewis.
That's awesome.
And Marvin Lewis, Kurt Schottenheimer. You love that. I mean, I've told this to people that I had more fun, just plain fun, doing high school football than just about anything I've done in my career. I mean, we just had a ball. Great production crew, back in the Root Sports days, and obviously now with the Steelers as well. All the guys that are behind the scenes that you would see, that bring you Penguins telecast and Pirates telecast. They're this and are sought after nationally to do NFL broadcasts. They did the high school football productions for us, so they always look great. It was just a blast to do. It was so much fun. Wolf and I would pound. We would go to the snack bars.
No,
and hit them up. I mean, So the gyros are at Aliquippa. I remember Seton LaSalle. I could go down to food. Seton LaSalle had the kibasi on the grill. That was unbelievable. Halushki at Hopewell. Meatball sandwiches. You go up to the place and, hey, listen, can we buy a meatball sandwich? Well, you know what? Dolores hasn't shown up with the meatballs yet. She's still home cooking them. You're like, oh, this is so going to be worth the wait. You know it. If you're waiting on Dolores to bring in the meatballs, man, you got a good night ahead of you.
I don't even want to know what Wolf did.
The whole thing was just great. Yeah, it was fun. And
my first year at Washington, I hadn't covered the Steelers yet because I started in February. So I go out to do football tab stuff, and they send me out to Fort Cherry the first year. I'm going out there. First of all, I had no idea where the high school was at. Mm-hmm. I'm new to the area. I'm new to Washington County. I drive out to Fort Cherry High School. It's in the middle of basically the farmland sitting out there, and I drive up. I go down, and I meet Jim Gary, and he was if you picture a coach out of the 60s, this was Jim Gary. Now, this was in 1990. This is in the 90s, and he just. Some coaches you talk to, and they'll Jim. Now, maybe he did swear in his real life,
nope,
when he's talking to the kid, but I doubt it because I'd ask him a question, be like, "Well, Dale, cheese and crackers. I don't know what we're going to do about that."
It's exactly what his grandson Tanner was telling me.
That's who he was, and you talk to Marty Schottenheimer, God rest his soul. You talk to Marvin Lewis, and they credit Jim Gary for making them the men that they are and getting them to where they are. It's just a great family tradition out there at Fort Cherry, and congratulations to them, 2 in a row. That's
just Western PA coaches and tradition in general.
He was
awesome,
great. I went out there another year. They had Mike Vernillo, who was the all-time. He would end up being the all-time leading rusher in Whitfield history. He's a freshman on the team that year, and I ask him who you got running back, and he goes through a bunch of guys, and about 7 guys in, he says, we got this freshman Mike Vernillo. He might do a little something, and 3 games into the season, he's run for over 200 yards in each of their first 3 games. And for some reason I was doing something, and I had to call Jim up. I'm like, Jim, you said you kind of slow played this Vernillo kid a little bit, huh? He's like, well, he's a freshman. I didn't want to pump him up too much, but we were pretty excited about him.
We thought he had a chance.
And I love that. I remember talking to, just first of all, just a variety of different coaches that you talk to, but. Coach Novak down at Woodland Hills, and talking to him about, hey, the players you got coming up. And remember, they'd always have, 4 or 5 Division I players in that team. I remember him telling me, we got a young kid. He's the real deal. The real deal. His name is Miles Sanders. He's going to be really good. And I'm like, okay, I'll put that name away. And then just watching guys like, Khalid Hudson playing for McKeesport. And, just the individual players, but everything around it, just, the communities were so welcoming. They loved having our TV crew in there. I love the idea that you could trot down to the field half an hour before kickoff and, talk to Art Walker or Coach Novak or Coach Montecalvo. They didn't bat an eye. Oh, yeah, how you doing, guys? Can you imagine rolling up to a head coach half an hour before kickoff, just right out in the middle of the field, in a college or pro game? They'd be like, what are you doing out here? It was just – it was a blast, and of course, Wolf was a ton of fun, and so it was great to be back doing that, and got a great game. Both teams have so much to be proud of. Just a great effort, and then went and picked up my mother in upstate New York, and now we're hunkering down and getting ready for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's so cool that the Steelers give these teams that opportunity to kind of showcase themselves on at that level and not just play at the stadium, but get the whole
experience. Yeah,
experience of that.
That 3 years I was at Pitt, we did local coaching clinics. The O-line coach from Seton LaSalle or whatever would come and sit with our O-line coach, and then have beers with him after and food. I mean, it was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad you said that, Dale, because that's this could easily not be televised. It could easily not be at Acrisure Stadium. Easily. It could easily, none of those things could happen. And it's important to the Steelers organization, and that starts at the top. Art Rooney has a long connection, to put it, in obvious terms, to the city of Pittsburgh. He knows what it means. He's got an appreciation for it and a love for it. And without him and without the Steelers organization, that doesn't happen. So you're absolutely right to point that out, that, that's we get to do those games and fans get to go to that stadium, and that's where it starts.
Absolutely. And, you just think back, it was important when they were building the stadium, for example, for Dan Rooney to put up the plaques of all the paintings and stuff of all the Whitfield champion teams in the stadium. They're still in there, and that's a big cool part of it. Just that tie in to the local football scene,
and the players that have come out of this area are ridiculous too.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
Oh my goodness gracious, no doubt.
We just mentioned Fort Cherry, which is a little school in McDonald, has produced 2 NFL head coaches.
Yeah. I was just thinking of all the NFL Hall of Famers, and it's unbelievable, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and getting to see Darrelle Revis, and Darrelle Revis, I don't know, it's because he split his time in between football and basketball, but he was like a 3-star recruit, and you see him play, and you're like, how many guys are better than him in the country? I mean, even in high school, you could see it. Same thing with
Rob. I shouldn't even tell this story, but I was in the building when we recruited Revis, and there were a couple people high up that weren't sure if he was good enough to play for the Panthers because he was one of those guys that was always as fast as he needed to be. He never looked like the fastest guy on the field, but no one ever sniffed him when he had the ball in his hands. He was unbelievable, and he was the best basketball player in the city.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right. And I remember, Mike Smianik, his coach, said basically, look, there might be, 20 point guards better than you in New York City. He goes, there aren't 10 cornerbacks better than you in the country.
And it was Sean Gilbert's nephew. Oh, by the way.
What's that?
It was Sean Gilbert's nephew, by the way. So, yeah.
Yeah, who was also.
He wasn't bad either. Like the 4th pick of the draft.
But you look at. I mean, again, you just go down the list of players. Aaron Donald, but they're just. The competition was, and by the way, Dan Mason was phenomenal for Penn Hills. He he had so many injuries. I was sorry to see that, but man, you talk about a guy who brought the lumber. And you just go, but it's really all of it. It's the players, it's the coaches, it's the fans, it's the marching bands, it's everything around it. It's Dolores bringing in the meatball subs. I mean, it's just everything about the experience is absolutely wonderful. It's getting Donnie Revel on the radio to do the countdown show. You're driving around, I'd be leaving a game. I'm like, man, where's Don Revel's countdown show? Where's his wrap up show? So I know what's going on around the rest of WPIL, and then reading about it the next day in the paper. Everything. It just it's to be back involved in that and have a chance to do a game. It was fabulous, and we could go on. We could spend a week just talking about this. We might have just blown through our entire segment.
Not quite.
Just a great experience. Great way to start the weekend.
So my son's a senior at Upper St. Clair, and he has many buddies that basically played their last football game. And he's like, these are some of the my best buds and toughest dudes I know, and they're all crying. I've never seen them like this. Like, it almost brought my son to tears to chat with his buddies that they knew that I'm not going to put the pads on one more time,
Yeah. By the way, Jim Render, talking to him over the years, Terry out of Gateway. I mean, all the coaches that you kind of get to know a little bit. But you're right, and that's that's one of the things I was talking about, or tried to talk about during the broadcast. Like, it's a game, but it's a dream. Like, every kid who puts on a uniform, I don't care if you're Peebly or when you are, if you're from Western Pennsylvania, at some point you're dreaming about, man, how cool would it be able to be able to play where the Steelers play, at Acrisure Stadium, in a championship. And then only 2 teams from every classification every year get the opportunity to do that. That's a dream to walk out in that field and to play those games and to play with your buddies. There's no sport, and maybe others would disagree. Maybe going back to my high school days, that was my best sport probably. So maybe that's why I think of it fondly. But I just think there's something about what you have to go through in football. And I'm not going to use these, boot camp and all that stuff. It's not war. It's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. But man, I mean, you sit there in August, you're like, oh my goodness gracious, double sessions, it's 100 degrees. I don't care how many weights you lifted and how much running you did. You are just like, oh, when am I going to get through this? And then, you get a quick nap and then do it again in the afternoon, and the study and everything that goes into the sport. Just once the season starts, there's, you're not, and I'm not trying to denigrate any other sport. I mean, basketball practice was like, you go from football practice to basketball practice, you think you're going to die. Or soccer. I mean, those guys are in so much better running shape than you would ever think about.
I'm sure there's some wrestlers out there going, we have it pretty tough too,
Absolutely, no question. But there's 50, 60 guys on a football team.
Yep.
And you're all in it together, And I
22 on the field at once,
I agree.
23 if you're at Avella or somewhere like that.
Yeah, I'm not trying to take away from any other sport. I just think there's something that causes that emotion, that gets people emotional when they've played their last game. I mean, once you play that's it. You know what I mean?
And especially around here.
Maybe there's something too. What's that?
And especially around here.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure. I always think to myself, I would have loved to have played football in Western Pennsylvania. I would have loved to, wish I'd gone. I remember watching games and thinking, man, I wish I could have been out there where it was so much bigger than it was in upstate New York. And maybe playing here would have made me a better player too, competition, Mike Tomlin says iron sharpens iron. Maybe in my case, iron would have sharpened chalk or whatever I was bringing to the table. But,
or maybe you'd have been a backup.
When you think of, yeah, I mean, if I go to school, when say Mike McMahon is at NA,
right? You went to Woodland Hills,
playing, yeah, I'm not playing quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not on the team, so it's a special thing. It's a great thing. And it was a wonderful way to start the weekend and to be back into that. And it was great. It was fantastic.
Well, Kinger, I know you had your mother at the house.
Yes.
Did you get to watch any football yesterday?
I did not. I was in the car, but I did listen to some football. So that was kind of interesting to get a chance to listen to various broadcasts as I was driving home. So I did do that. That was fun. That was an educational experience. But no, I saw very little. Actually, no, take that back. I saw no football yesterday.
Wow.
Not a play.
I saw a lot. Real quick, Dale and I were talking about this, and I on another show with Tim Benz where we were having this conversation that maybe tonight changes my opinion on this, but I'm not sure the Steelers' pecking order in the AFC really has changed after that Browns loss. Or, the Chiefs struggled. I know you didn't watch. You were busy. The Chiefs struggled with Carolina. Cincy was on a bye. Buffalo was on a bye. The other two teams play tonight. I'm not sure a whole lot changed in the AFC.
No, I think what happens, though, is your expectation as a fan, you get a little bit of an but you roll through the Browns, you're 9-2, you're going to win a couple more games, you're going to get into the playoffs. Now all of a sudden it feels like, whoa, that margin for error just got a little more slender. And I keep shouting this from the rooftops, man. The Bengals scare me. They scare me. And this game coming up on Sunday scares me. They've played with everybody. They've given everybody a game. They haven't been able to close the deal.
Not everybody.
But the
Eagles handled them pretty handily.
Eagles were pretty good.
But I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Good. Right. But
it was still only a 10-point loss, though.
20.
I think a lot of people thought. I'm sorry, my dog was barking, so I missed. What did you say, Matt?
No, never mind. I screwed it up anyways.
Okay. So I was going to say, they scare me. They're a team that everybody, a lot of people picked them to win the AFC North, right? Let's not forget that. And it's still a talented team. Look, we heard about how bad the Ravens secondary was, and you look at the Bengals. That's been, a big bugaboo for them. But the Steelers didn't exploit that. Steelers didn't throw for 350 yards against the Ravens. They won the football game, but they didn't do it that way. It's a team that can score points. And I think this is, we talked about this last week. This is a better Browns team. This is a Browns team that we should be evaluating since Jameis Winston took over at quarterback. Mm-hmm. That should be our field of vision when we're talking about the Browns. Okay, they're a 2-8 football team. Fine, as you go and beat them. Well, They're actually a 2-2 football team in the last 4 games, which underscores what a horrendous decision it was in retrospect, and even maybe at the time, for them to bring in Deshaun Watson, because they've been winning and getting better performances from other quarterbacks. Joe Flacco and Jameis Winston have been more productive than Deshaun Watson was. They're a different team with those guys, even with the trade of Cooper, even with the injury to JOK, who, again, I don't know whether he's going to be back next week or not. So I think, Matt, I agree with you. I don't think their pecking order changes. I don't think where I would consider ranking them in the division changes. I do think, though, that there are going to be some people looking up at the sky and wondering if it's falling if you lose in Cincinnati on Sunday. I agree with you. I agree with where you are, but that's what happens when, you're, as fans and as prognosticators and as observers of the game, you go, well, they're only 3.5 point under. They'll win. They'll find a way to win. They'll be 9-2. They'll win it down. They're 8-3. Now, how do we evaluate this team? So I agree with you, but it's it's part of also what makes it fun.
Absolutely. Kinger, we'll let you go. I think you got to let your dog out or something there, so we'll let you go. We'll see you tomorrow. That is Rob King, Steelers play-by-play announcer, the voice of the Steelers. He is Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with more right after this. Welcome back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, the Steelers' red zone offense has been a bone of contention. Really, so I looked up the numbers. Mm-hmm. First 6 games with Justin Fields at quarterback, the Steelers had 22 trips in the red zone. In the 5 games with Russell Wilson, they've had 20 trips to the red zone.
Okay.
They were 9 for 20 in the red zone, or 22 in the red zone with Fields, 8 for 20 with Wilson as the starter.
Okay. These are small samples. That's
very small sample sizes here.
You said 8 for 20. I mean, you've
8
only
for
had
20. Yeah.
I mean, that's.
And here's the thing: if you look at the numbers now, because people say, well, Wilson's at 38%, because they're not counting the one. They're giving Fields credit for the touchdown they scored against Cleveland,
The handoff.
a handoff, and they're not giving Wilson credit for that.
I mean,
Apples, 6 one way, half dozen the other.
Big picture, the red zone offense has to get better.
It's been a problem all year, regardless of the quarterback.
Yeah.
But they had a 4 for 6 game in the red zone with Russell Wilson at quarterback against the Jets. Nobody was complaining about it then.
No, 100%. I was looking this up. So I'm going to do a podcast on it later, so I just had a couple little red zone notes on it, is Belichick is a big believer, and this is just old school football, that the easiest way to get the football to cross the goal line is to run it in.
Yes.
And that's been proven over and over and over. And that might favor Fields. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there, well, they have a better chance of running the ball over the stripe with Fields than they do Wilson. Okay, I'll buy that. I mean, I think that there's truth to that. But that negates years and years and years of Wilson's prolific red zone passing. And he's been one of the best ever. Now, someday in his life, might be when he's 60, I don't know, he's not going to be a good red zone passer anymore. Of course. We all hit Father Time is undefeated. But I am not pulling Wilson out of red zone based off 20 attempts.
No.
That really weren't even that bad. And it's not like he doesn't belong.
Well, so they went 0 for 4 against the Ravens, which really so before that, he's 8 for 16.
Yeah. Which was fine. Right.
Passable.
Yeah,
that's so they had a bad game in the red zone against the Ravens, who, I mean, they changed things schematically in that game. Baltimore, that being.
Yeah.
That, maybe you weren't expecting there. It's a division opponent. They probably spent the entire offseason studying the Steelers. How are we going to beat the Steelers?
Sure.
Because that's what you do. Again, we go back to the divisional games are different. So I'm not ready to say Russell Wilson's a bad red zone quarterback because I don't think he is.
No, I'm not ready to say that either. I don't even really have suggestions. Like Pickens has a lot of red zone targets. Good. That's what I want.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Freiermuth seems to get used in that neighborhood more than he does elsewhere. Washington's looming. Williams is looming. I would think that he gets more red zone action going forward than he has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I do think it's a pretty good run game in short yardage situations, in terms of power and the type of backs they have. Now, if you look at the best red zone offenses in the league, they're the normal people you'd think about. I mean, it's Burrow, it's Lamar. I mean, it's it's Allen. There's a couple weird ones in there, like Carolina's near the top of the league.
But they run the ball well.
They run the ball well, though. That's what I was going to say, yeah. I mean, even like Arizona's near the top of the league. Tampa's near the top of the league. Tampa's run offense has gotten really, really good all of a sudden in a year.
Yeah. Because their offensive line's good.
Yeah, exactly.
Detroit's offensive line, good.
Yeah, they're at the top of the league too, of course.
If your offensive line is teeing off in those situations, your red zone offense will be better.
Yep. But I really think deep down, the field, to your point, the Fields versus Wilson thing is two real small samples.
We're talking about one touchdown
difference
right now.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say, boy, it was super prolific until Wilson got in there.
No.
That doesn't
seems to me it's more of a team issue than it is, and maybe you do need more red zone options.
Yeah, or maybe Arthur Smith's like, I haven't called my best game in the red zone, or there's been 5 plays that were miscommunicated or a hold, or I'd have to go through watch every red zone snap, but there could be fluky things too. I don't know. It needs to get better for this team to be super competitive. You can't just have 6 field goal games time and time
No,
again.
you can't rely on that. And I agree. People who were saying that, I completely agree. You're not going to win as often as they have. Now they've found ways to win those games, but you're not going to beat the Bengals, for example, not scoring red zone touchdowns. But
right.
To our point, the Bengals give up a lot of red zone touchdowns.
They're horrible. I mean, they're like the worst in the league, basically. So I don't know. I think it's a little bit of an overreaction. Anytime you're at the bottom of the league in any category, especially one that's that important, it's noteworthy and needs to be corrected and addressed. And you have a 10-day stretch here. I'm sure that's something that's been on the priority list. And going back to the bye week as well. Arthur, Russ, what can we do better in the red zone? I don't have the answer of what they can do better, but I'm sure that they're going to try new things.
And I don't know, for example. I mean, okay, Justin Fields ran for touchdowns early in the season. Good for him, and he scored the touchdowns. Doesn't mean that Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren couldn't have scored those touchdowns.
True.
We just don't know.
And I have mixed feelings about a Fields package going forward. I think a lot of that was Taysom Hill-centric in terms of the team they were playing that just had a lot of problems with that. And I see the merits of both, but I don't see the merits of, well, he's going to be our red zone guy.
Yeah,
I'm not on board with that.
That's basically saying you have 2 quarterbacks, and if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one.
Yeah. I mean, if he's going to come in and do a little bit of stuff every game, fine. It also wouldn't blow me away if he does nothing in this game. If he doesn't take one snap, and I would understand both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyways, that's going to do it for hour number 1. We got to get to a break. He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with hour number 2 right after this. And we are back. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson, and this is the start of hour number 2 of The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. And Matt, people can get off our backs on this DFS stuff.
Oh, yeah,
we're in the money, baby. We're in the money.
We're strong.
Bo Nix, a quarterback. Only 11.8% ownership. We got 19.42 points out of Mr. Nix. He didn't run as much this week.
No, it's been a little bit down, but he's feeding Cortland Sutton, and he's playing well, and they're getting a lot out of him. Could he challenge Jaden Daniels for Rookie of the Year?
The odds
They're going opposite direction.
The odds are closing on that.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I just thrown it out there. I didn't know that.
We had Kareem Hunt in the lineup. He had 68 rushing yards, 19 receiving yards, 3 catches. Not a great week, but 60.8% ownership. So everybody had him.
I'm shocked that he was that heavily owned.
No, Carolina's run defense has been awful.
Man.
Tyrone Tracy, we got 10 points out of him, 42 rushing yards. He had 4 catches for 28 yards. He did fumble, 11.8% ownership. He got 10 points.
Okay, so that's an okay investment. Yeah.
We stacked Cortland Sutton with Bo Nix. That worked out well.
Yeah,
Cortland
real
Sutton,
well.
8 for 97, and both receiving touchdowns, 29.7 points out of Mr. Sutton, 37.3% ownership.
Wow. They have a really good thing going, and he's playing better than ever. So I think he's a wide receiver 2 the rest of the way. Yeah,
gonna
give or
produce
take,
like
right?
that, yeah.
Right. I mean, he's like the only show in town.
I'd rather have him than Tyreek Hill at this point.
Wow.
Tyreek Hill, 5 catches, 48 yards, 9.8 points. He just doesn't look right. 11.3% ownership. We should have gone Waddle.
And Waddle and Jonnu are the guys getting all the big production guys.
Jonnu's been producing every week
He's
now.
been every week, yeah.
We had Nico Collins in the lineup, 14.2% ownership, 5 catches, 92 yards, and a touchdown.
That could have been a lot bigger, too. Like I think it was one of the very first plays of the game. They threw him a bubble that he took to the house.
Yeah.
Illegal procedure or something. They
Ineligible
penalize him all the
downfield, I
time.
think it was, or something like that. My Luke Schoonmaker call,
That was great.
20.7% ownership, so a lot of people were thinking the same way there. But we got 14.5 points out of him, 3 catches, 55 yards, and a tutty.
Yeah, that was monstrous. I mean, even just the 3 catches would have been a win.
Yeah, 3 for 55 would have been okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But
They
getting a
throw
touchdown
on
there,
top of
wide open down the middle of the field, you like it.
Mm-hmm.
The Austin Eckler call did not work out, 5,600 points. None of the Washington running backs did anything.
Didn't
really
much of anything, right.
Against Dallas's defense. He had 4.4 points, 4.1% ownership, and got hurt at the end of that one. And the Broncos defense.
Yeah, there we go.
24
Broncos are what pulled us out.
Yeah, 24.2% ownership on that one. 5 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery. They got 10 points. So we finished with 129.72 points. Respectable. Not a great week, but good enough to get us into money.
Yeah, Schoonmaker was probably the best call. The Denver hookup was great. Is Tyreek a shy away from guy now?
Whew.
I mean,
Here's the thing. Is he going to be $7,200 every week from here on out? Because
I bet not.
I mean, Nico Collins was $7,600. Maybe a couple. You're just not going to know in that Miami offense.
I know. I just think Tyreek.
I just think he's hurt. He's dealing with stuff, and it's not good. It's just not his year.
In the receiver pecking order, he'd be pretty low for me right now. I mean, amongst the quote top guys.
Yeah. They play Thanksgiving. We'll have to put together a Thanksgiving lineup on Wednesday.
Wednesday, yeah.
Since we got 3 games that day. Actually, 4 with the Black Friday game.
Oh, I forgot about that, too.
So we got 4 games, standalone
Lump
games.
those all together.
Yeah, so probably do that. But we finished in the money, and that's all that matters.
Good.
Looking at this week's top performers, Caleb Williams topped the list with 340 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Sam Darnold had 330 and 2 touchdowns, none of which went to Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
Tua Tagovailoa, 317 and 4 touchdowns, despite not going to Tyreek Hill in those situations.
Last couple of weeks have been really good for Caleb Williams and Tua.
Yeah, those are the only 300-yard passers this week. Baker Mayfield at 294, no touchdowns. Kyler Murray, 285 and no touchdowns.
Been inconsistent as a fantasy performer and doesn't run as much quite as you think, but when he's on, he's on.
Yeah, Will Levis, despite getting sacked 8 times, threw for 278 and 2 touchdowns.
Crazy game.
Yeah,
for him.
Really crazy game.
Strange stat
kind of
line,
what
everything about it. It's weird.
I think that's what you kind of get with him.
Yep.
Rounding up the top 10 in yardage for the quarterbacks, Jaden Daniels had 275 and 2 touchdowns. Bo Nix, 273 and 2 touchdowns. Russell Wilson, 270 and a touchdown. And Jared Goff, 269, but no touchdowns.
Yeah, which is odd. I mean,
they ran all their stuff in.
They just, and Jaden Daniels is back to running again. That's good for him.
Yeah. Looking at the rushing leaders for this week, only 4 guys over 100 yards. Saquon Barkley, 255, 2 touchdowns, over 300 total yards. If you had him in your lineup this week, congratulations to you.
Yeah, he's first pick in the draft if we're talking right. If we redraft right now, right?
Oh yeah,
he has to be.
He's on pace right now to break the all-time record for total yards in a season.
Yeah.
It's 25-08 or 18, whatever it is, for Chris Johnson.
I would much rather have him than Henry, and Henry's good. I mean,
he catches the ball, not a great amount. Right. He's also got 12 touchdowns this year, which he could have 25 touchdowns.
We were talking about it off the air. He's been stopped, I think, somewhere between 8 and 10 times on the one.
Yeah.
And, of course, you push it from there,
Right.
So he's on the wrong team for that part.
Tony Pollard had 119 in the touchdown.
He's been better than people realize, too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a quality fantasy asset.
Aaron Jones, 106 in a touchdown.
There was some talk that Akers was going to start eating into his production, and Jones had 85% snap share or something like that, and he fumbled on the one.
Yeah.
I mean, that he could going in.
Yeah, I had him in my other DFS lineup,
Okay.
my single one that I put together. He was my flex. So
Could have been
happy
bigger
about that. Yeah, but it could have been a bigger day. And then Josh Jacobs against San Francisco,
Crazy.
26 carries, 106 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah. Doesn't break the long ones like Saquon, but he just chunk after chunk after chunk.
Yeah, just running through them. Jahmyr Gibbs just missed with 21 for 90 and 2 touchdowns. David Montgomery got hurt in that game.
Short week, too.
Short week. So I would not expect to see him on Thursday, and that makes Jahmyr Gibbs very attractive on
Gibbs
Thursday
is
night.
someone that could even challenge Henry Barkley for RB1 with Montgomery. Like we were doing RB ranks. He'd be really high.
That's 21 carries and 2 touchdowns, plus he catches the ball in that offense.
And he looks phenomenal,
yeah.
too. He's a really good football player.
Bucky Irving had 12 for 87 and a touchdown, but they still
He gets vultured, though.
They split that package up so crazily. I can't make any sense of it.
Irving's somebody I want in Dynasty. I think next year's the year you draft him high. It's been a really good story, but they run the ball a lot, and I think they just like the other guys still.
Yeah, they'll keep them all in the mix.
I think he went down to the 1, and then
he had
they
a bunch
brought
of catches in that game too.
Oh, I know. White's the one that's getting phased out a little bit.
Yeah,
So he is starting to take it over, but it's a little frustrating because the pie could be even bigger.
Yeah, Rico Dowdell had 19 for 86. His long run was 9 yards.
Yeah, it's not bad though. I think
a
he's
yeoman-like
usable.
effort.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Jaden Daniels, you mentioned, he's running more, 7 for 74 and a touchdown rushing.
That's all you need. Yeah.
Kyron Williams had 16 for 72 and a touchdown.
He got 0 targets, and I think 0 targets the week before.
Yeah, that's not promising for them.
I mean, when Kupp and Naku are out there, that's where the ball goes.
He basically gets all the carries on that offense.
Yes. One of his problems.
He fumbles.
He fumbles, but he's really good in protection.
Yeah.
He got ran over a couple times, but he sticks your face in there, so he doesn't go out for patterns as much.
Kareem Hunt had 16 for 68. He was the number 10 leading rusher this week. Anthony Richardson just missed. He had 10 carries in that game for 61 yards.
He could have had a much bigger fantasy day. There were some big drops, and his stat line looks worse than what he really did.
Yeah. Receivers. We had 9 over 100 yards this week. Jordan Addison taking advantage of Justin Jefferson getting basically triple teamed, had 8 for 162 and a touchdown.
Hawkinson benefited too.
Jalen Waddle, 8 for 144 and a touchdown. Trey McBride, 12 for 133.
He had a bazillion targets.
That's all
it
he
seemed
does.
Like everything was going to him.
I don't know why they drafted Marvin Harrison.
Well,
they don't use him.
McBride's probably the tight end 1 if you're redrafting right now.
I think that kind of targets? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd take him over Bowers. I'd take him over Kittle, all those guys.
Jacoby Myers had 10 for 121, but Minshew's out for the rest of the year.
Yeah, rumors Daniel Jones could be in that mix, but that doesn't.
Right now it's Ritter.
Yeah,
not good.
Yeah, I think that hurts Bowers too.
Puka Nacua, 9 for 117.
I used to think him and Kupp were close, but I don't think they are anymore. I think he's a tier above.
T.J. Hawkinson, 7 for 114.
He's a top 5 tight end going forward. I think. There's some good ones too.
A.J. Brown had 6 for 109 in the touchdown.
The problem with those guys, I mean, that was with Devontae Smith out.
Yeah.
They're the only team that runs the ball more than the Steelers.
Yeah.
And when they get a lead, forget about it.
Yeah. Goddard wasn't even used much in that game.
Nah, a couple here and there.
Yeah. DJ Moore, 7 for 106 and a touchdown.
I thought that was encouraging.
Given what's happening recently.
Him and Keenan Allen both had good fantasy games the first time.
Yeah. And then Terry McLaurin with the strangest stat line ever, 5 for 102 with a touchdown, including an 86-yard touchdown. He had 4 for 14 or 15 yards on his, was doing nothing. He had one catch where he caught it 8 yards downfield and then ran back, started getting tackled backwards, escapes and gets stopped for no gain. It's like,
oh yeah,
maybe this just isn't his day, and then boom, they
untouched 80-yarder or whatever it was. Right, wow, it's a strange game.
Yeah. Just missing number 10 was Cortland Sutton, 8 for 97 and 2 touchdowns. Ridley had 5 for 93. Nico Collins was a hit. Johnny Smith, 9 for 87 and a touchdown.
It's kind of what he is every week.
Is he a tight end 1 moving forward here?
Yeah. I think I was listening to a fantasy podcast I like that they were saying, is he a top 5 tight end right now? I'm like, no, but that's the conversation. I think he's ahead of Njoku. Would you rather start him or Kelsey? I know that sounds insane, but And I'm starting him over Kincaid and some of these guys are drafted pretty high. Pitts, I mean, he's an every week starter for sure.
Trey Tucker had 7 for 82, but now you just don't know.
Yeah,
with the Raiders, we talked about him a few weeks ago. He's a starter. I
kinda like the player.
Yeah, he's a starter. And
Ritter really hurts.
Ritter hurts everybody there.
Yeah. And even if they sign Jones, he's not going to play this week.
Right.
Yeah.
David Moore in that game against the Kansas City Chiefs had 6 for 81 and a touchdown.
Yeah, that's a tough offense to pin down, too, a little bit, because Thielen did some good stuff. They want to get Leggett involved. Coker was inactive, and they really want to play
the young
Coker
guys.
And Leggett.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd overreact to that.
Yeah, don't run out and grab him.
Yeah.
But Devon Vele, 6 for 80.
He's starting to come on. I think he's there, too.
Yeah.
They want a little more physical guy than Franklin and those type of guys. Mims.
Don't fall for the Chig and Quonkwo.
No, it was one big
mistake.
Play.
It was one big. He had one catch for 70 yards and a touchdown. So don't just look at the points and say, "Oh, he had a big game."
Make
He's
sure been a tease for years.
Yeah, absolutely. Cole Kmet with a shows up with 7 for 64.
He had a down stretch there, but all in all, it's been a pretty high quality year.
Yeah, if they're going to throw the ball like they've been throwing the ball,
yeah.
That's
their offense looks a lot better with the new coordinator too.
Yeah,
especially Williams.
Malik Neighbors 6 for 64. That was all in the second half of that game. He had no catches in the first half.
I think he was publicly
and then he complained about it. And I guess he and Dayball had a little chat about that today.
Yeah, and some of the bigwigs, or one of the bigwigs, was Schefter or Palacero, or one of those guys was saying the locker room is revolting. They probably think Daniel Jones is the best quarterback, and
I'm sure they do.
Third best guy in the game.
What was really revolting yesterday was their effort. That was revolting.
They're in bad shape.
There were some dudes just out there going through the motions from what I
You wonder,
saw.
when that kind of stuff happens, the Dexter Lawrences say, "Get me out of here,"
Yeah, there's always that issue. Just looking at some of the other leading rushers from the day, just Jaleel McLaughlin had 7 for 44.
Yeah, the estimate thing is kind of
went away.
That was like a one week deal only, and now he's definitely third.
Emmanuel Wilson got 9 carries in that game against.
He doesn't look bad either.
He's not a bad player.
Niners D's not the same, but he's not a bad spell your top back type guy.
Yeah.
Jacobs takes a lot of pounding. I mean, he'd be a good handcuff to hold on to.
Yeah, Rashad White did get 12 for 37 and a touchdown, which again he got the same amount of carries. He didn't get the catches that he usually gets.
His catches are down.
Sincere McCormick for the Raiders, 5 for 33.
Abdullah got
the
big chunk.
Yeah, he had a touchdown catch.
He might be a flex, Abdullah,
if he's going to get that kind of work. Yeah, why not? You got 32 rushing yards out of Tommy DeVito. You got 33 rushing yards out of Caleb Williams. You couldn't have been happy as a Devin Achan owner, 10 for 32.
I think he caught some as usual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You couldn't have been happy as a McCaffrey owner. This is not what you waited to get back for him to get back for. 11 for 31 in that game and a fumble.
So as mentioned, this is more of just a regular note. I do a podcast with Brian Peacock, who does Locked on Niners, and he's like, McCaffrey doesn't look close to what he used to. And this is more of an NFL thing. He said the 3 Niners I would least want to be out of the lineup are Trent Williams, Bosa, and Purdy. All are out. And by the way, Ayuk's been out, and they've got problems.
They weren't even competitive in that game.
I think they're circling the drain.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and the rest of the division doesn't look as bad as it did.
Who's the best team in that division?
I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, I lean towards Seattle, but that's massive recency bias.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think it's still Arizona, but they're up and down a little bit.
Yeah, they're young and, a little bit of smoke and mirrors on defense.
Yeah. The Rams offensively are good. Defensively, they're not.
Back seven's bad.
Awful.
They lost at both lines of scrimmage, too.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doubling Jalen Carter every snap, and then everyone else is wreaking havoc.
Yeah,
and,
hitting Stafford left and right.
Yeah. If they can protect, Stafford tears you up, but
they don't protect real well.
That's a good defense they played.
Yeah, absolutely. But an interesting week. Not a lot of
there were 6 teams on bye.
Not a lot of new names out there that jump out at you to say, "Well, pick this guy."
What are you
tomorrow
expecting tonight? I don't really know. I still have great respect for the Ravens offense, but it's almost like Steelers-Ravens that the familiarity with these two teams is insane.
That's the thing, and I do know. I mean, I have respect for the Chargers' run defense.
Yeah, me too.
The Ravens are going to have a difficult time running the football.
I mean, do you think this is closer to a 13-10 game or a 38-35 game? I don't think the Chargers can play the latter.
I don't think they want to play that way.
Right.
I think they want to run the football, and Roquan Smith not being out there for this one is
massive.
huge.
Right.
Huge. I do think that they will have some success running the ball because if they play, they're going to, and they have to keep Kyle Hamilton off the line of scrimmage because they don't have a free safety capable of keeping Herbert in check.
But they've been leaning on Herbert more in their run game lately because it's better. McConkey's game time decision too, which is something to keep an eye on.
So I mean, we'll see, but Herbert's certainly capable of lighting up that defense.
Yeah.
But you go into that game if you're the Ravens thinking we got to stop their running game because if we let that get going,
Harbaugh's
then we're really in trouble.
on that.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to the game. Just all the familiarity. I mean, the assistant coaches all know each other. Chargers' whole backfield was a Raven last year. Like weird things like that. They like the same players.
Yeah.
And the same coaches.
Absolutely. So it'd be fun to watch, and I'll take the points.
I leaned that way too. I just think it's going to be close.
Yeah, I do too.
Kind of like Ravens Steelers.
Let's get to a break. That's going to do it for the Fantasy Football Focus. He is the Matt Williamson. I'm Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. And we are back. I am Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And Matt, Steelers Bengals this week. Bengals coming off of a bye. The Steelers getting a little mini bye. Mike Tomlin choosing to give them the extra day off today.
Okay.
They'll practice tomorrow.
Okay, so they'll still get an extra day of practice for a typical Sunday game,
right?
Correct. Okay.
Yeah, that's why the Tomlin news conference moved to 2:30 tomorrow, because then Thursday they're also practicing, even though it's Thanksgiving, but they're doing it in the morning.
They almost always do on Thanksgiving. I remember.
So you get the 4 practice days. You get a chance to rest your bodies up a little bit, and gives the coaching staff, I guess, today would have been their day to build a game plan for the Bengals.
Yeah, and I'm sure they've been kicking it around and all that too. Works out well though too. I mean, from what I understand, the players still get a legit Thanksgiving day with their families and stuff too. I mean, you knock out the morning and then kind of disappear for a while. It's nice to get that extra practice for a pretty pivotal divisional game. I mean, especially from the Bengals' perspective. If I'm looking at this from Cincy, like we lose this one, it could be curtains.
Here's the thing. In his career against the AFC North, Joe Burrow 2-5 against the Browns.
Okay.
3-6 against the Ravens. 3-2 against the Steelers. Doesn't have a great divisional record against teams that see him more often. And the fact that he's only played 5 games against the Steelers.
Yeah, that's right. Why are they so much less than the
It's
others?
almost like the Lamar thing.
Yeah.
Where he just missed a bunch of games against those
coincidentally
teams.
or whatever.
Yeah. Because this is his 5th year in the league.
Mm-hmm. He's only played him 5 times.
Yeah.
That's sort of Lamar-like. I mean, in terms of his frequency.
In those games, Burrow is completing 64.4. We'll give him the extra little there, percent of his passes. 11 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. The 8 interceptions.
Those are just Steeler games, right?
Yeah. The most he's thrown against any team, even though he's only played them 5 times. He's played the Ravens
Way
9
more,
times.
right.
That's the most he's played any team. He has 21 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions against the Ravens.
Against the Ravens.
He has 11 touchdown passes.
Throw them all over the field type of games.
Against the Browns, he has, and remember, they're 2-5 against the Browns. 12 touchdown passes, 5 interceptions. Against the Steelers, 11 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions.
Wow.
So the touchdown passes are in line with what he's done against the other teams.
Yeah.
But the interceptions, he's averaging more than 2 per, almost 2 per game against the Steelers.
Against the Steelers. How about that? I mean, they're good at causing turnovers. They rush the passer. I mean, that's not news to any of our listeners.
They've sacked him 15 times in 5 games.
That's actually where I was about to go. Before the Browns game, I was expecting the pass rush numbers for the Steelers to really spike these 2 weeks in particular, and it didn't happen against the Browns. This group, though, their line's not great. they play a sixth offensive lineman a pretty high percentage of the time to help. I don't know if Orlando Brown's going to help or not. But I mentioned I was on the air with Tim Benz. Been a lot of times this year that we've previewed the opponent and talk about all the O-line woes they've had, but the Steelers still don't have that 6, 7, 8 sack type game, like the blow up, and there's reasons for it, but I'd love to see that this week, I guess is my point.
Yeah, we'll see if Alex Highsmith's able to get back for this game. That's a possibility.
Mims is now the right tackle. Orlando Brown, I think he's maybe playing, maybe not.
Possibly, maybe not. Yeah, we just don't know. And he's just a guy.
Yeah, he's not special, right?
And their interior line of that line is
very ordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Burrow will stand in there and take the hit and super competitive and all that stuff too. Like they don't want to be a get it out of your hands super quick team with those two receivers. They want things to develop. And even like Gesicki's a downfield guy as tight ends go. So you would hope the pass rush could rule the day in this one, more so than it has.
Yeah,
how good they are.
I thought Cleveland last week got the ball out quickly in the first half. They only threw the ball 11 times in the first half, but it was coming out quickly. And then in the second half, nobody was rushing the pass real well in that second half of that game.
I mean, all Garrett sacks were in the first half. I mean, it's just
Cleveland's all four of their sacks were in the first half. The Steelers had the one in the second half.
For obvious reasons with the extreme snow, and it's going to slow that down.
But yeah, the Steelers' pass rush has to get home in this game.
Yeah, it's kind of where it's going to too. Like, if you want to end the season and into the playoffs like you can and want to, it should be on the back of that pass rush and that defensive front as a whole.
So T.J. Watt has 7 career interceptions.
Okay. 2
of them have come against Burrow.
Oh, really?
Where he's just basically taking the ball out of the air.
Yeah. I wonder if that's part of it, just dropping him into spots that they don't expect.
It's not even dropping. He's just grabbing them on as Burrow throws them.
I guess
they're coming out of just right at the line of scrimmage. Yeah, just snatching them out of the air like he's picking a fly out of the air.
Yeah, which is really, really hard to do, too. He's done a few of those in his career. I didn't realize that 2 of them were against the Bengals.
Yeah. And Burrow knows that.
Oh, I'm sure. I would think
he
you're
brought
not
it up
running screens to that side.
Yeah, he brought it up in the offseason. I can't have T.J. Watt picking my passes out of the thin air.
At the line of scrimmage.
At the line of scrimmage.
It's different if you're dropping or tip balls or whatever, too.
But he's had, obviously, reasonable success getting to the quarterback. They need T.J. Watt to play T.J. Watt kind of game. Mm-hmm. He has 12 sacks in 13 career games against the Bengals.
Okay. Which is really good, of course.
Yeah.
Right.
They need him, and that's the third most that he has against any one opponent. He has 17 against the Ravens, 17 against the Browns, which is the most by any opponent against those two teams. Mm-hmm. The Steelers can't let him be blocked out of this game.
Yeah, it needs to get back to elite production. I'm sure he'd be the first to tell you the Browns game wasn't his best performance, and I'm sure 10 days to stew on it is resonating with him as well.
Would you move him around more? I would with Highsmith not out there. And here's why. Herbig is the backup at both spots.
Him and
Preston Smith
are
the backup at both spots.
Right.
So why not move Watt around a little bit more?
The only reason why not is if he doesn't want to. You know what I mean? And I get the impression he'd much rather come to the quarterback's right. But I also think
he's a better rusher from there, but he can also get there from the other side.
Yes.
And I want him getting to the quarterback and affecting the quarterback. And I don't want the opposing offense, and he's going to be there every time.
I 100% agree. And I think it greatly affects his bottom line, his production, compared to the Bosa, Parsons, Garrett level guys. Those guys all move around. They even stunt and loop more than him, and that doesn't make them better. It's just it's a disadvantage to him when competing against the elite edge guys in terms of sacks throughout your year or whatever. And it's remarkable that he is unbelievably productive, not doing the same thing every snap, but not being as diverse as those guys. And I've always just wondered, does he not want to do it?
He does.
It's not like he's going to
object. They do it at times. I mean, there was
some this past week too.
Yeah, there was some. It wasn't like he lined up out there every single time, but it just, in those obvious passing downs, when the offense knows that, hey, we got to roll guys that way.
Yeah, right.
Where the quarter even saw it in the game, like there was some rollout stuff away from him.
Mm-hmm.
And Winston's not a big rollout guy, but they were rolling the pocket away from T.J. Watt.
And Winston did that stuff better than I expected too, throwing on the run and I'm all in favor of moving him around, and I find it odd that they're so static with him since they made the move. What was it with Bud? But whatever, which made sense at the time. But most teams aren't left-right with their edge guys. Nowadays, and I'm sure he's better on one side, but so what?
I would even be milling him about a little bit. Like, I want you walking around the line. Even if you're going to rush from where you usually rush from, I want you walking before the ball is snapped. I don't want you setting up out there like you're – and oftentimes you'll see him out there he's down in this three-point stance, waiting to go, or he'll go down to one knee while they're barking out their signals and stuff. I want you to stand up and move around. Maybe you lose 3 snaps, getting off. Your get-off's a little bit slower because you're walking around. But if they don't know where you're rushing from and they got to try to figure out where they're rolling the protection to, that's a win for us.
So you see that a lot with Garrett. Like, I think there are a few elite pass rushers, Parsons as well, not as much Bosa, that can pick and choose their matchup. Like, go whatever makes you comfortable, we'll adapt. The best example is Chris Jones. I mean, like, Chris Jones is almost blatant about it. Like, I'm throwing over the right tackle. You guys get out of here.
You guys figure out where you're
right.
And they do that because those teams don't have another guy.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Whereas the Steelers have other guys. But if Watt is going to get that kind of attention, the other guys have to win consistently.
I mean, the amount of attention he gets is really valuable, but his production could be better.
Yeah.
Just in terms of stat lines.
So, I mean,
it's a great problem to have.
It is.
There's without question.
There's no doubt.
Your point about Highsmith is a good one, though, because, yes, Highsmith could come off the quarterback's right side, but he hasn't done a lot of it because Watt hasn't done a lot of it. But the other guys are just as happy doing either way.
Right. So, and even, there have been times when Highsmith has been out there where because Highsmith is, early in his career, he was the backup.
Mm-hmm.
So he's capable of,
Not to mention, lining Watt up next to Hayward is
good
pretty
luck with
intriguing.
That. Yeah.
You know what I mean, to say the least. If you bring a blitz from the other side, a 5-man pressure with the one coming opposite that twosome is going to be hard to deal with.
Yeah. I just think when you're not getting home consistently, as the Steelers have not been, they got 25 sacks this year.
Mm-hmm.
This defense,
way below the way expected.
This defensive front should not have 25 sacks right now.
Mm-mm. No matter how the opponent plays you, no matter where you align, it needs to be more than that.
And I understand the ball is coming out quickly most of the time. But on those instances where it's 3rd and 7 or longer, I want to get after the quarterback for sure.
Need more from that. And it's there because on tape it's not like, oh, this group isn't very good.
Speaking of that, there was an instance last night in the Eagles-Rams game, where the Eagles chose, after initially declining a penalty, to accept the penalty and make it 3rd and longer.
Yes. Or
2nd and long. Whatever it was, 3rd and long, 2nd and longer than what it would have been. And then they went out and got a sack.
Then he got inside, right.
Which is why you accept the penalty. And if you're Mike Tomlin in that game against the Browns, you accept the penalty because, hey, we can get a sack, and then they're really screwed.
And then put them out.
Now they're not even in field goal range here because it was a 2-point game or 1-point game at that point.
Is that, this is not where you were going with this, but was that the play where
they initially declined? He saw them lining up to go for it and decided
that was allowed.
It shouldn't be. And they tried to stop Tomlin from doing that in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And he explained to them, look, I didn't know what you guys were calling because your mics weren't working. And, And so, no, I want to accept the penalty.
Yeah, because that was odd last night. He was like, I'm going to change my mind because
I see what they're doing. It's not the way it's supposed to work.
Yeah, that's like cheating on the test. Reading ahead,
But it worked in that instance because they went and got the sack.
Yeah.
If on 3rd and 7, the Steelers get a sack, nobody's saying Mike Tomlin did the wrong thing.
No, I hear you. So the Steelers have been great of winning in the margins, and we always talk about, hidden yardage and, a lot of that special teams and penalties. By the way, Bengals are really good with penalties or turnovers, of course. Sack differential is a big thing, too.
Yeah.
And they've been losing that, and they routinely don't lose sack yardage. I mean, it's one of the most predictive things of what's your plus-minus sack yardage for the year. The best teams are always at the top.
Yeah, they've not been a heavy blitzes team this year. They've been trying to get there with 4 guys, and they get pressure.
They pressure a lot, right.
But they've not been getting the sacks that they usually get.
And I don't think all pressures are created equal either. I mean, their number – I'd have to double-check, but I think their numbers when pressuring the quarterback are outstanding.
They're ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they're ridiculously good. I mean,
Yeah.
when there's under pressure compared to other defenses when under pressure.
Yeah.
Not just versus clean pockets. I'm
Right.
just talking about when they get pressure, they make it count more than anybody.
Yeah, going into that game against the Browns last week, that was one of the stats I threw out there. They'd given up a QBR rating, whatever that is, of like 2.
Yeah, like
2.
Like craziness, right.
I mean, the worst quarterback in the league has far more than a 2 QBR rating.
The other thing
clean
that kind
pockets.
of goes – there's 2 things that also go hand in hand with this too is they're exceptional at batting down passes, like rare.
Yeah.
Which matters on a pass rush situation too. And by far they're number 1 in quarterback scrambles. Like they're the only defense. The most efficient play in football is a quarterback scramble, a called pass that the quarterback just decides, I'm going to go.
Because half the defense has their back to the
Right.
quarterback.
I mean, in terms of just yardage per snap, I mean, that's the most efficient play in football across the league. The Steelers are the only defense that actually have a positive EPA when the quarterback decides to scramble. Like, they're happy when you do it.
Yeah.
When you do the most efficient thing in all of football, we benefit. They're the only team
because of team speed in the middle of the field.
Well, I also wonder if I'm not saying priorities have changed, but if we could be number 1 in shutting down quarterback scrambles and be number 1 at batting down passes, but our sack numbers aren't quite as good, maybe there's something the way there too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And definitely against the Lamars and Daniels of the world.
Because they're still the number 2 scoring defense.
Yeah, and in the end, all that matters is how many points do you let up. You know,
Right.
So some of it might be sort of scheme related that we're so good at batting down passes and eliminating these really highly efficient plays. We don't want to get too far upfield, you know?
Right. And you're not allowing the ball to get over your head.
Right.
You know, they're not doing that.
And the Ravens game's a perfect example. Like, they were much better than the people blocking them.
Yeah.
You know, maybe the sacks don't reflect it, but if you watch the tape, it's like, man, Cam is kicking the crap out of that dude. You know?
Yeah.
Or Benton on pass rushes, kicking the crap out of that dude.
And teams
Like, Benton's been really good rushing the passer, but I think he has 1 sack.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, that's all part of it. You'd like to see those guys get home a little bit. I can remember having that conversation with Stephon Tuitt early in his career. When I was hosting the Stephon Tuitt show with Jerry Dulac, and he said, look, I'm getting pressure. I'm getting to the quarterback.
Yeah, like I'm winning my one-on-ones.
He said, but a lot of times as I start to get there, I start to chop my feet a little bit. And,
I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
And he said once he just stopped doing that, and started running through the quarterback, then you saw the 10 sack seasons from Stephon Tuitt, or season, before then everything fell
There's an
apart.
art to finishing, too.
Yeah.
Without question. So
I don't think that the Steelers don't know how to finish.
No, I don't think so either. I don't think
but
that's
maybe
the
that's,
case.
Keanu Benton at this point
Maybe.
could be better at that. But to our original point, they're just not getting
They
the
need to
sack
get more.
numbers.
They still need to generate more sacks any which way you cut it. Ball
Yeah.
coming out quick, batted passes, whatever story you want to tell. 25 is not enough.
No.
Yeah, it's just
Not in 11 games.
Right. No,
No.
not for the talent you have. This isn't the
Right.
Panthers pass rush.
No, right. So we'll see. See if that changes here down the stretch. He is the Matt Williamson. I am Dale Lolley. You're listening to The Drive here on the Steelers Audio Network. Matt and I will be back with more right after this. And we are back. I'm Dale Lolley. He is the Matt Williamson. And we're just talking through all the scenarios here as we finish up Week 13. Or Week 12.
Man.
Week 12, I should say. Week 12.
Right. Thanksgiving will kick off Week 13.
It comes right around the corner here. So the Steelers sit at 8-3 right now. If the playoffs started today, and I know they don't,
Right.
they would be the 3 seed in the AFC. Here's
Kansas
what's
City still won.
Yeah, here's what's at stake tonight.
A lot.
A lot. So you get the Chargers right now in the 5 seed at 7-3. You got the Ravens in the 6th spot at 7-4. They could flip-flop if Baltimore wins tonight.
Right. Okay.
Baltimore would have the tiebreaker
right.
over the Chargers. The Steelers also have the tiebreaker over the Chargers and the Ravens right now, for that matter.
Beat them both head-to-head.
Beat them both head-to-head.
Of course, there's a Ravens game looming.
They have the tiebreaker over this team that's in the 7th spot, which is Denver.
Right. Okay.
At 7-5.
They have some big wins.
They have some big wins. Yeah. People acting like this season is.
They didn't play anybody.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. So you right now, the 3 teams that are the wild cards in the AFC playoff race, you have wins over all 3 of them head-to-head.
Yeah.
The 4 seed right now is Houston. We've talked about Houston. I wouldn't playing Houston. If you had to go to Houston in the first round of the playoffs,
if you're the 5 seed, you're not in that bad a shape.
You might be favored.
Might be favored. I think the Steelers and Ravens would be favored there. I don't know if the Chargers.
I don't know if the Steelers will be. The Steelers are The Steelers are underdogs in Cincinnati this week.
Yes, you said it was 3 or 3.5 or something like that. That seems like a lot.
3-point underdogs, which is kind of crazy to me, but I get it. I mean, Cincinnati's dangerous.
No, they're very dangerous.
Yeah. But then you have it in the 8th spot is Miami at 5-6.
On a 3-game winning streak, so they're far from out of it.
Yeah. So looking at what Denver has.
The Bengals at 9?
Yeah.
The Bengals are still a team I think can make it, but the Steelers could basically eliminate.
Actually, the Colts are at 9. The Bengals are at 10.
Okay.
Yeah, the Colts have a game in hand. They're 5-7. Cincinnati's 4-7. Denver right now has left on their schedule the Browns at home next week. They're on a bye this week. Then they get the Colts at home. So back-to-back home games. They get 13 days off between the Browns and Colts game.
Oh, wow.
So I guess that's a Thursday night game on December 2nd that they come back out of their bye from. Then you get the Chargers in Los Angeles at the Bengals on December 29th, and then they finish up against the Chiefs January 5th.
I don't see any layups there. There's winnable games for sure,
yeah.
But I don't see any layups. Maybe the Chiefs are even resting people.
They could be at that point. Miami has remaining the Packers in Green Bay this week.
That's Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
They're a dog in that game.
They're a dog in that game, yeah.
But they could win it.
Then they get the Jets at home.
Yeah, it sounds like a win.
Yeah. Then they're at the Texans.
I don't know who I'd pick in that game right now.
Yeah.
Subject to change.
Then they get the 49ers at home.
Doesn't look as bad as it used to.
Then they're at Cleveland on December 29th.
Ooh, that just – I remember looking at their schedule going, boy, they actually have some weather games late in the year.
Yeah. And then they're at the Jets on January 5th.
Yeah.
So they could be back-to-back weather games for a team
not built for, but
doesn't handle that real
Jets
well.
don't look daunting.
Yeah.
I know the Chargers have a pretty easy schedule.
The Chargers right now, after this game with the Ravens tonight, are at Atlanta.
Okay.
Then they're at the Chiefs.
Ooh.
Buccaneers at home.
Maybe it isn't so easy.
Broncos at home. At the Patriots, at the Raiders.
They finish up with those.
They finish up with those 2 last.
If you can split those first 4, would be great.
Yeah.
Right.
If you can get at least 1 in that, you're going to win 10 games.
Yeah. So these next 4, including tonight.
That's why tonight is a
pretty big,
pivotal game for them.
Yeah.
The Ravens remaining schedule. At the Chargers tonight. Eagles next week.
Brutal.
At home, but it's still the Eagles.
Still.
At the Giants. Well, you're going to win that one.
Looks good.
Steelers at home. At the Texans. And then the Browns at home.
There's a couple losses in there.
That's why tonight's game is if the Chargers happen to win this game tonight, the Steelers don't clinch the division. They still got to take care of business themselves.
I've heard some arguments why you want the Ravens to win tonight, and I don't think I'm on board with it. I think.
Wouldn't you much rather have them have 5 losses right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And the head-to-head against them, I want to win the division. I know we were talking about it off the air, but there's a logical way of looking at it that the 5 seed might have an easier path to the Super Bowl than the 3.
Yeah, because Houston looks like they're almost locked in as the 4 seed.
Right, which doesn't look bad. But it's a road playoff game, and it's not great, and they might be playing a lot better by then than now. You don't know. Now, you'd love to avoid Buffalo and Kansas City as long as you can, especially Buffalo to me.
You can't avoid them both.
Right.
I mean, you have to play them at some point.
That's not really how it works.
Here's what Buffalo has left. The 49ers at home on December 1st.
Are they going to be like a 9-point favorite in that game?
That's a night game in Buffalo on December 1st.
It's going to be a big line.
It's going to be a lot. Yeah. We'll see what the 49ers have back at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're at the Rams.
So that's a week from Sunday.
Yeah.
So who did Buffalo play this week? They were off last week.
They're off. They don't play now till...
They were off last week.
They play December 1st. That's next...
Oh, that's coming up.
That's coming up,
yeah.
We're
Okay.
almost into
That's this
December.
Sunday. Yeah. Okay.
Then they play at the Rams, at the Lions,
Mm-hmm.
Patriots at home, Jets at home, and then at the Patriots.
They probably have 2 losses max. They're in good shape.
They're at least going to lose one.
They're going to win the division.
Yeah, they're at least going to lose probably one. Though. They'll be dogs in Detroit, but that'll be a great game.
Yeah.
Kansas City still
they're
has.
Going to win the East.
Yeah. Now remember, Kansas City has 1 loss right now, and they lose the tiebreaker to the Bills. They get the Raiders this week at home. Then they get the Chargers at home. Then they're at Cleveland, Texans at home, at the Steelers, at the Broncos.
There's a couple losses there. They play Black Friday.
Yeah.
But it's not a very difficult team.
No.
I'm sure they'll beat the Raiders.
Yeah. So, I mean, everybody, when people start talking about the Steelers and their tough schedule, yes, they have a tough schedule going down the stretch.
They're not unique.
But everybody else does too. None of those schedules don't have more losses on them.
Mm. So one angle I would kind of think is important, and which really reflects on Steelers-Bengals coming up, is I think there's 5 elite quarterbacks on the planet right now. Mahomes, they're all in the AFC, unfortunately. Burrow, Mahomes, Lamar, Allen, Herbert. Now, I think Mahomes is 1, although he's not playing like it at this point, but he's the one I'd least want to face in the playoffs. And Herbert's 5, and the other 3 are somewhere in between. But they're all really, really good. Where I'm going with this is I would love to keep Herbert and Burrow out of the playoffs. Just because
You're probably not going to keep them both, though.
Burrow's a long shot at this point.
Yeah.
But if that's the one argument where I could see the Ravens win tonight. Well, that Charger path gets a little harder. I'd much rather play against Knicks or, Tua. But I think the Chargers are going to be a playoff team.
I think they are too. With 7 wins right now,
a wild card.
Like, can they get to 9? Yeah. Can they get to 10? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably enough.
Yeah.
But I'd love to keep Burrow. I'd love to keep Burrow out. That one's is easier said than, or the Herbert one's easier said than done.
Yeah,
the Burrow one. If you beat them this week, they're real
probably
long shot.
now they're probably out because the best they can do is get to 9 wins.
Yeah, and that's sweeping at that point.
Yeah.
And they have terrible tiebreakers.
Yeah, their tiebreakers are not good.
Yeah.
So, it makes tonight's game interesting. I think as a Steeler fan, you'd like to see the Ravens get dealt a loss.
I think so.
But if they don't, it's not the worst thing in the world either.
You still have you're
still
in the driver's seat.
You still have the opportunity to play them again and beat them again. You've won 8 of the last 9 against them.
Yeah.
And at this point,
everybody wants a division, but being the 5 seed isn't terrible either.
But if you take care of business, if you beat the Bengals twice and you beat the Ravens, or even if you lose to the Ravens, you still end up in a tie for the division title, assuming the Ravens take care of the Browns later this season. If you both finish with 2 losses, you've got the better conference record, and you're division champs.
You're still very much in pole position in the division, even with the Ravens win tonight. There's such a domino ripple effect, though, if you beat the Bengals.
Yeah.
Because they're close to elimination at that point, and you play them the last week of the year. Are they even going to be motivated at that point? You know what I mean? You might get a shell of the Bengals. Maybe the Steelers don't need it either, but I'd love them to not have anything to play for.
Yeah. Although for them, they're playing to be. If the Steelers have something on the line, playing for that would certainly be.
I'm just
something.
saying, like if Burrow has things he's been dealing with all year, which he has, maybe a rest.
Yeah.
Chase.
Does Higgins play that game?
Defenders want to play that game. Yeah.
So there's all that stuff that's happening with this team, but. So enjoy the game tonight. Should be a good one.
Yeah,
and
it should be really good.
I hope you don't like hearing Harbaugh because it's going to be mentioned like 7,000. I don't know if you knew this or not, but they're brothers.
Yeah, they're brothers. They're both pretty good coaches, too.
Yeah, their dad was a coach, all that stuff.
A lot
You're
going
going to
on.
hear that 1,000 times tonight.
Yep.
So,
But I'm sure all that being said, if we would have never had that last segment, everyone watching is still not going to root for the Ravens. No
probably
way, shape,
not.
or form.
Yeah,
That's
probably
listening,
not.
Right.
And
I don't blame them one bit.
One way or the other, I think this game benefits the Steelers.
Yeah.
Regardless of how
I'd love
it
to see
turns
the
out.
Chargers win and really puts you in pole position in the division. I don't win the division,
Absolutely. Matt, that's going to do it for our show.
Yeah, fun one.
Remember, tomorrow, no video. We may have a show on YouTube.
It's going to be a little different
It just won't
format,
feature our smiling faces. But we still will do a show tomorrow. We got a show on Wednesday as well. No show Thursday because of Thanksgiving, and then we'll be back Friday with our final previews of the week. But we got lots of more
Friday will be a
previews.
busy one. 3 games to talk about, and there's a game going on while we're on the air, I think, too, and all kinds of stuff.
All kinds of fun stuff, and it's Black Friday.
Yep,
all kinds of fun. Yeah, but for my partner, Matt Williamson, for Justin Miller here on site, running the Justin Miller hotline, and for Tyler Vittmeyer here making sure our videos do make it out onto YouTube. I am Dale Lolley. We thank you for listening to this edition of The Drive on the Steelers Audio Network.
Steelers football happens here. The Pittsburgh Steelers Audio Network.